My guest today is Dee Nichols. Dee and I had such a great conversation. Of course, I feel like all of my conversations with guests are great, but today you have a real treat in store. My friend Dee Nichols, who is an author of children's books, has this short coming out, the Scaredy Bears series. It's Curtis and Fergus, Eeny, Miny, Oni. um, there's a lot of richness here, a lot of richness in what Dee has written in his story, how this story came about, his background, and it's really it's not just for kids. It is for kids as far as the book goes, but the lesson isn't just for kids. The lesson of life that is within these pages, if you peel it back and you get to know more about what is the foundation for the characters and for the setting, there's a lot there. And Dee and I had a conversation that is well worth your listen. So let's dive in. Well, hello, and welcome to Story Sessions, where your story matters. I'm your host, Laura Lynn Donahue, and each week we gather for meaningful conversations rooted in lived experience. Let's dive in. Dee, welcome. I'm so glad to have you.
Glad to be here.
Thank you. Thanks so much for joining me and our listeners and our viewers. This is Dee Nichols, and I'm so thrilled to have him. We are not label mates, author mates. I always want to revert to music language because we were in the music industry for so long. So it's hard for me not to call the publishing house the label and the authors the artists. So if I get that mixed up, just go with it.
I think there's a lot of similarities, and that's probably why you do that. So.
Yes, thank you. Well, so again, thank you for making time to be here. And I would like to sort of set the scene a little bit because let me just tell our audience first that your day job, is this going to be right, is
yes.
You're a camera operator for the most part.
Operator. Yes.
Okay. And you want to say side hustle? I don't know.
My other passion, maybe.
Your other passion. I like that better. You are an author, but a children's author, and very unique, beautifully illustrated, styled, creative story.
Thank you.
You want to give us just a little bit of background about yourself, where you were raised and kind of what your interests were growing up, so we can get a little feel for who Dee Nichols was in the beginning?
Gotcha. I grew up in northeastern Ohio, kind of out in farm country, and my dad and my grandfather were both truck drivers. And if I have a storytelling style, it probably comes from them. And if I think about their day jobs, they probably had a couple of minutes of time, like unloading a truck or having to get somewhere else, and they might run into someone. So their sense of time and place and narrative and setup and punchline and all that stuff, definitely inherited that. And then it's also Ohio and it's cold sometimes. Get your story out and get on with it. So yeah, that definitely shaped the way I tell a story, I think.
Oh, that's great. So maybe not as slow and drawn out as we might tell a story here in the South.
That just gets where you're going, and the idea of conservation of terms, like, and I'm a big fan of a rewrite. To me, when you're writing, the hardest part is always getting the idea out initially, maybe. But that rewrite to where you can kind of work it and get it and just pare it down to where the littlest it needs to be. That's my favorite part of writing, is finding that right amount of balance, not just to where it reads right, to where it sounds right, and almost with the way I kind of free write a bit to where it looks right on the page,
Yeah. Well, you've definitely got all the visuals and the words. I'm excited for the listeners and watcher viewers to get to see. We'll
Thank you for
give
saying
some
so.
yeah, we'll give some visuals in a minute. Well, we'll skip ahead to your day job as a camera operator, and we come into you're doing all kinds of fabulous things with fabulous people that you're welcome to share about. But I would love to get into the story of how you became an author, especially for elementary, middle school age children.
Uh-huh.
That maybe started around the pandemic.
It was, and if I backed up, my first ambition was always to be a storyteller. But I thought it would be with movies, and I've made short films, and I've written songs. Same kind of a thing where you're telling a story within 3 minutes or 5 minutes or whatever. Being a cameraman, I initially wanted to be a director, and then I fell in love with being a camera operator because you got to work on so many different things. You might get to work on a TV show one day, or a movie another day, or a concert the day after that. And then shooting live music is something I've always had a passion for, just being in the moment. Back in the day, I shot a lot of rock and roll. These days, what I shoot is a lot more scripted, and it's a lot of concentration and a lot of hours focused that way. So writing has been a kind of an offset of that, a way to get away from that and kind of burn some creative juices in that way.
So as you transitioned into writing, tell us about really the precursor to your to Curtis and Fergus.
The the impetus for it was when we all got stuck at home for the pandemic. I was 5 days away from leaving on a tour, and we were going to 14 countries to shoot 51 shows. Literally had my suitcase packed, and then with all that energy that it takes to be, I'm ready to go out the door. Then we're all stuck at home. Um, so I had made a couple of like weird. I'd worked at a scenic shop when I was younger, and I had learned how to take nothing and turning it into something. Like,
What's a scenic shop? Sorry. What's a scenic shop? I read that.
okay, it's like building sets for TV shows or commercials or something like that.
Okay. All right.
And
Good.
so I work with these amazing guys, and they would have a discussion and maybe draw some line squiggles in the dirt, and then they would grab a piece of cardboard and cut something, and then suddenly there was a shape, and then we were making an enormous set or a table or something like that. And it was just this. It was such great training for you have an idea, and then you're actually holding that idea a couple hours later. So stuck at home like we all were, someone had given me a sewing machine, and I had handmade a couple of these weird little teddy bears before, and I just decided I was going to sit down and learn how to do that. And I tend to wear black clothing since I've worked in like show blacks and stuff like that a lot. So I started chopping up my clothes because it was the only really thing that we had during the pandemic. You couldn't get an Amazon delivery. I started making these weird little bears, and then I made 5, and then I made 10, and then I kind of made a house full. And at some point, a friend said to me, if you write a story about those bears, I bet you could sell those bears. And that was never anything I had done before, written a story, a long form story. Well, before that, I kind of had to determine, was it going to be a movie or a short film or a video series? And it seemed like a story would be where I could consolidate the ideas I had in one spot and control it myself and be able to do it myself. So that's really where the idea behind writing a book first came from.
Okay. That was great advice. It's a good way and a good way to occupy your time while we were all sitting around listening to the birds.
I can't, I just can't sit around. I just don't do that is not, that's not how I'm built. If I might be, digging a hole, but it's going to be a really good hole, and it's going to be an impressive
Mm.
hole.
Yeah, we had a couple of our kids were got stuck at home over the pandemic, and they got a sewing machine or they got one out of the attic or something
Yeah,
and started on all kinds of different clothing projects.
yeah,
But it was a good
oh,
creative outlet.
very much so. And
Yeah.
I think that I look back on that time now. It certainly didn't appear that way at the time. That it was R&D for what I would be doing next, but that's certainly how it turned out.
So tell me, actually, is that Fergus in the very back in the red?
Back there, that's Marmalade back there.
Oh, that's Marmalade.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let me give
And
you a
then
little, that's Curtis and Fergus right
there they
there.
are. Okay. Okay. Yeah. And each one of those dolls is unique.
Fergus is, yeah. So what I did when I came time to tell a story, what I did was kind of take the different parts of my personality or maybe the way I thought about things, and I kind of assigned them to different bears. And I thought about maybe how the world looked when I was a kid, because I wanted it from a perspective of that. Um, and with Fergus, like, he's very internal, and the way that I might eat my feelings sometimes, you know what I mean? Like, Fergus's emotions tend to come from his tummy. He's all belly in that way, and he's all worry. Whereas Curtis is like a bigger brother, and nothing really seems to bother him. And the question that I came up over and over was points of view. Fergus doesn't seem to know anything, but he worries about everything. And Curtis seems to know everything and doesn't seem to worry about anything, you know. And those are the two voices that are most often in my head, wrestling back and forth, you know. And Marmalade, way back there in the back, he's the one that can't sit still. He's the one that's always doing something. So
Okay.
I just took my little neuroses and put them in the mouths of little bears, and it's a lot more interesting coming that way.
Yes. And you have visuals.
I do.
Do you have someone help you make the bears now?
So initially I was making them, and I was cutting my fingers and sewing my hand into the sewing machine and every sewing accident you could possibly have.
Yeah.
And I was friends with Miss Loretta Harper. She is just an amazing seamstress and creator. And I was always hitting her up for, like, well, how do you sew this? Well, how do you do this little part back? So after a time, she agreed to come on board, and she actually takes care and builds all of our Curtis and Fergus bears at this point. And hers stay together, and she doesn't hurt herself, and the stuffing stays on the inside where it's supposed to stay.
Wow. She's a very gifted person. I've seen some of her work over
She
the
does
years.
absolutely amazing work, and we're blessed to be working with her for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. So let's just see if I can get a little history on your sewing skills. Did you
Yes,
have sewing skills prior to?
non-existent,
None. Okay.
absolutely none.
Okay. All right.
But but working in that scenic shop all those years ago, excuse me, it made me not afraid of trying something. And you
Hmm.
come to accept, like, you're going to make something for the first time. Maybe you're trying to make that one perfect. And I learned that's not what's interesting. What you want to make the mistakes on the first one. So jump right in there. And if whatever you make breaks in half halfway through it, well, you've learned something in that way. And so was the way with both of these. Like, I had to figure out how to thread the machine and all that stuff, and the bobbin and all that. And the sewing machine I had is like someone had left it on the curb or something. I don't know, but like the deck was half taped on it. It didn't quite work right, but that just kind of made it more of a challenge. I just wasn't afraid of making any mistakes, because you're kind of working with junk to start with anyways. And the same thing with Curtis's eyes here. There was a time where I was standing there having my morning coffee one day and saw a pattern in my curtains in my living room, and just went over and just chopped the piece of fabric off the curtain off the wall. And 20 minutes later, Curtis had some eyes. And I was like, okay, well, sometimes the answers you're looking for are right there in front of you if you're willing to sit there and be patient.
Yeah. Open your eyes.
Yes. But an artist uses what's available to them. I'm a big believer in that as well. And that's the way with making these guys. And the same thing with writing the story. I wanted to pull from things that I knew from, so it was reflective of not just my neuroses, but like the woods behind my house. There's a map at the front of the book, and that's where the little world kind of happens. Yeah. Well, that was the woods behind my house when I was a kid, and it's gone now. It's all been chopped down. It's been turned into something else. So it kind of lives on in my mind, but now it lives on in my stories also. And when I'm telling the story in the book of the bears running from one place to another, I can see it in my head. Literally, I can see it. Well, that's this far from that, and that would take this long to get there. And, so I think it's very important to your first point there, that the author, that you put a lot of yourself into your story. And I think a reader can tell the difference and feel that authenticity coming through.
By tuning into this podcast, you understand one thing. Everyone has a story to tell, and that includes you. But sometimes we need a little help to bring our story into the world. That's where Story Sessions comes in. We're a collective of published authors, editors, and experienced storytellers who know that great stories aren't manufactured, they're revealed. Through thoughtful listening, guided conversations, and respect for your voice, we help uncover the story that is already inside you. Story Sessions. Your story told the way it was meant to be. Find out more at storysessions.live.
Do you recall who the first person is that you gave or was that you gave one of your bears to?
I don't, because I made so many of them. And
Fair, that's fair.
my joke at the time was that companies pay good money for R&D,
Mm-hmm.
research and development, and like seeing what works and seeing test audiences and stuff like that. There is no better test audience than a little kid. And I would just give a bear to one of my friend's kids. Sometimes they were well received and sometimes they were not. And my buddy's one son, Mars, told me, this stupid thing doesn't even have a face. And his dad was mortified and so embarrassed. And I was like, no, that's exactly what I needed to hear. I don't need to hear that it's great and he really appreciated. No, I needed some brutal honesty. And a little kid that doesn't care about your feelings, best thing could have happened. I think I got Curtis's face together maybe a week or so after that. And then he came back around and he wanted one once he saw it. So
Very good. You were listening and paying attention, and yeah, and to have that honesty, whether brutal or not, is a good thing to have.
it's more helpful than it's great, right? You as a writer yourself understand that. I just, no, really tell me what you're thinking about.
Yes, yes. I need that creative or that constructive criticism, so to speak, but doesn't necessarily have to be criticism, but it can be very constructive information that makes a difference in the outcome of the end product.
I just every now and then, just to say, even when I first started making these bears, I had like a house full of them. And I was talking to an entrepreneur, and he was just telling me he didn't know that I was sitting in a house full of bears. I was just talking to him about some broad strokes about some things. And he's like, what you got to do is you have to find an idea and just pursue it. And now he's telling me this, Laura Lynn, as I'm sitting in my guest bedroom, and there are these little bears. There's probably 100 of those things. And so I just took a picture. I was like, you mean like this? He's like, exactly like that. That's exactly,
I'm imagining you sitting with all of those bears. It's a good visual. I like it.
But you just need someone to say, yes, that's a good idea, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
You're a creative person yourself. This idea comes along that just tell me, I just need to bounce something off somebody sometimes and just hear, that's a good idea right there.
Yes. Yes. That encouragement goes a long way, especially when you can feel the sincerity of it and you trust the person who's talking to you. So I'm curious, how did you develop Fergus and Curtis? How did they become your main characters along with Marmalade?
Yes.
But was there anything else that you were wanting to express through them as characters?
There was a relationship I had with my older brother when my older brother seemed to have all the answers in the world to everything and that wonder. And I wanted to explore that relationship. And just the fact that a lot of the original Ferguses were made from scraps from Curtis. You know what I mean? Like little bits. So that's probably where that relationship, I wanted to explore that. And then other stories, I wanted to have like little life lessons and I love fables. I love anytime it's not just a story, but there's something behind it. Like for me, one of my favorite fables this is not a children's story, obviously, but True Grit. And True Grit, it's such a wonderful story. And that protagonist, she wants to see her father's killer brought to justice, and she wants to be the one to do it. And in the end, it cost her her right arm, and she's fine with it. Like that's a story with a lesson behind it right there. So obviously, I don't want to go to those lengths, but other different things that I've learned in my life, or little lessons I've learned. I wanted to see if I could kind of weave those into like something that was clever and something that a child might pick up on and maybe kind of stick with them in the back of their mind, you know.
Yeah, yeah. And your brother, is he around to receive it, or?
He's not around.
Okay.
My brother died in the 1994.
Oh,
And
okay.
that was
Okay.
probably one more thing with that, in telling that story. A lot of the end of my brother's life, he was sick, and it ended kind of badly. And when you think about that over time, like you tend to remember that part of the relationship the most, the thing that happened last. But so much of my relationship with my brother was more interesting. It was about the lessons when we were younger and how I looked up to him. I wanted to go back and kind of reclaim that part of our relationship, just not the bad ending, but the part that was always so good and the part that sticks with me.
Yeah. And that is, if for nothing else for posterity's sake, but for so much more than that, you have this living, breathing, visual, tangible, all of I'm looking over this way because I've got the little mini one that you gave me
There
of
it is. Eeny,
eeny,
miny, mony.
miny.
I'll say it.
Thank
Oh, you.
you.
I'll say it for you. Eeny, miny, mony.
Thank you. Eeny, miny, oni. So, um, I love that you did that. That's a real tribute to your brother and to your family's history. You've got it in a very special format. So tell me, because all I want to say is eeny, meeny, miny, mo.
Well, that's where it starts, though. Someone gave me a book by the author Bill Bryson. Do you know Bill
Mm-hmm.
Bryson?
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
love Bryson.
Yeah.
He's just wonderful. And he
Yeah.
does those great travelogues where he's a fish out of water and stuff. Um, but in one of his books, Made in
Okay. Yeah.
America, he starts it off with explaining that eeny, meeny, miny, mo was a counting system that predates like the Roman occupation of the UK. It goes back thousands of years. That little snippet of language has made it through there
Wow.
all these years. And so, in kind of coming up with the lore of the big woods and Curtis and Fergus and their relationship with each other, I just wanted to kind of weave that through there. That's a jump off point for them. Like sometimes they're always trying to outverse each other and they're always trying to one up each other.
Mm-hmm.
But this little cornerstone piece of language is something that they always jump off of, and that it has such a history that it goes on, or that someone that might read Curtis and Fergus and read the Scaredy Bears might pick up on that and then keep perpetuating that little bit of language forward. You know, we're just trying to make our contribution to the language.
Yeah, absolutely. Did you ever read the book Tiki Tiki Timbo?
I did. It's been years, but I remember that part of it right there.
I can do the whole thing.
Awesome.
That was a
I can remember the no so rum, but then I can't remember what comes after that.
yeah, so Tiki Tiki Timbo, no Sarimbo, Chari Bari Rooch Poo, Pip Perry Pimbo.
I'm in awe.
Just one of my many mad skills.
You're great at parties, I'm sure.
Right. Very, very, very good party trick. um, so let's talk a little bit more about the characters because there's so much to each one of them. And Fergus as the one who is, like you said, always trying to figure something out, or something bothers him and he wants an answer. Might do a little dance. He wants Curtis to understand him and give him the feedback that he needs. Tell us a little bit about what he's struggling with in Eeny, Meeny, Miny, Owen.
Oni.
Oni. I knew it. It was close.
You're so close. Um, as far as you mean what he's after or what he's looking for?
So in the particular excerpt that I read, he had learned the days of the week.
The days of the week. And now that's a perfect example of, like, a bear would never need to know the day of the week. It's probably, as Curtis tells him, you don't need to know the day of the week. It's one of the best things about being a bear. But Fergus understands that there's so much that he doesn't understand, and he will find things to worry about. That I will find. That's me to a T. I will find something to worry about. Even everything could be great. I could be sitting on an island right now, and something would be, and I can't help it. It's just part of who I am. And as you get to a certain age, you kind of accept that about yourself, in the way that when the pandemic happened and we were all freaking out, I know about myself. If I just give myself something to do, I won't freak out. And then I can seem solid to the people around me, like I'm cool and calm and collected because I'm doing something with my energy. So that's just like a further insight on the rest of the characters. Like, some of them are reflective of people that I know or the people that I've met, but they're all sides to my personality. There's another character, Pierre, over there. He's a Canadian goose who doesn't know what Canada is. And I just think that that's just hilarious for some reason. And there's a couple of wise rabbits. Well, again, I am all of those things to different groups of people. And it just seemed like this was an easy way to express that and maybe honor a couple of my friendships in the process.
Yeah. Something that Fergus does that reminds me of myself is that forward thinking, the planning. So, I mean, what if someone does stop by and they need to know what day it is?
Yes.
And I don't know. I need to be the one there that is going to have the information that everyone needs.
Someone is going to want an answer, and I want to have an answer.
Yeah. And I think that's a very real thought process that a lot of us deal with. And it can be great for planning ahead, but then it can also be debilitating at times because you're forgetting the moment that you're in, the Fergus moments, if you will.
Well, then you answered the question that's at the end of that story, Eenie, Miny, Nony, is, are you a Curtis or are you a Fergus, Laura Lynn?
Yes. Well, I definitely have I have both of them in me. I mean, we probably all do have a little bit, but I would say as a recovering codependent, I have always been trying to make sure the road is smooth, that things are organized, that everybody has what they need, even to the detriment of myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
I could probably do some more, use some more Curtis dancing.
Right.
So before this, you hadn't ever written a children's book and you submitted your work. How did you tell us a little bit about the process of going from, we know how you went from the beginnings of making the bears and then the story coming from some of, your own life experiences and circumstances and settings. Then from there with the book.
I happen to know Julie Brand from W. Brand Publishing. Just we've crossed paths in production over the years. And I knew that she had left the production world and gone to the publishing world. And then I knew that she had started W. Brand Publishing. And Julie and she has helped me out on different projects over the years, and we just work well together. There's a shorthand, a straightforwardness to things. And so I had sent her a couple of bears at some point. I think I'd posted some pictures of some bears online long before I had a story. And she had expressed interest in wanting one. So I sent her a Curtis and a Fergus. She got one of my favorite ones, actually. And she said, then, do you have a story? And I said, I have half of one. I remember this very specifically. This is years ago. I said, I have about half of one. And she said, that's more than most people have. Holler at me when you got the rest. And so I went through some things in LA. I was kind of losing my place that I lived in for like 20 years. I had the bears going on, and I just had a lot going on in my life. And I was just kind of deciding with a certainty how I was feeling about certain things, how I felt about love, how about friendships, how I felt about my relationships. And it just felt like it was all bubbling at one time. And within a very short period of time, I had a couple of meetings with a friend of mine that was a writer, a script writer, and I was telling him what I was thinking. And he's the one that kind of pointed, like, you should rather just sit down and write a book. And that kind of all came out in one section. And from there, I showed that to Julie. I sent it to Julie, and she had mentioned possibly prepping it to maybe shop it to a different publishing houses. And I had asked her at that point, would you consider putting it out? Because you're just someone that I know, and it would just be so much easier for me to keep kind of working the way that we're working. And she agreed to do that. And it was one of the best things that's ever happened to me, really. So.
Oh, that's fantastic. And her division of W Brand for children is We Be Books,
We Be
which I
Books.
love. It's so cute. I love it. And so one of the things that I love, and I know that the readers of your stories, whether they're children or adults, love the illustrations.
Mhm.
Tell us a little bit about your illustrator.
His name is Afshin. I'm not going to try his last name because my mouth doesn't.
Well, I was going to let you say it. I'll put it in the show notes. Don't worry.
Yeah. Afshin's in Romania, and I found him on Fiverr. Now, I hear that a lot of, writers have had trouble with finding illustrators on Fiverr. And I just got lucky. I got the right guy. I knew what style I wanted. There's a book, I'm not going to remember the author's name, but the story was A Cricket in Times Square. Yeah. And it was something I read when I was a kid. But I just loved that there was one illustration per chapter, and it was crosshatch style. And I think there was a map at the front of it also. And that just gave me a jump off point of what I wanted. That gave me some structure to work from. I was in Costa Rica at the time, and I went on Fiverr and just looked at different portfolios. And I found one guy, and we talked a little bit. And since I'm a camera operator, a photographer, I kind of knew framing it. I was very specific about what I wanted. And we just happened to work well on that first illustration. And so then we did a couple more. And then I think he did all 12 that we did for the first book. And he did Eeny, Miny, Oni also. And it's my plan to have him illustrate the second book as well. So.
Oh, that's great. Well, he's excellent. And you mentioned the map. And a minute ago, you were talking about the map as well, which made me think about really the importance of the places on the map that you have designated. You talked about the distance. You kind of in your own right as a child, you have the memory of going from one place to the next. But then tell us a little bit about the names. Is there a map we'll put a map up at the end of the story. I just was looking to see if there was.
Short.
There's not in the short. Okay. But I can visualize it. And you have home. And home has a capital H.
Yeah.
And I want to know about that.
That's just what home. I do that a lot when I need a word to stand out. And just like the lack of use of color or something like that, things they carry more gravity when you think about them in their smallest form, their most concise form. Like you right now, what is home to you? If you had to run out the door and you had to grab something, what a sense of home is, or for me, moving from one state to another, where is home then? What does that mean? Is it the things in my storage unit? Is it that? So I was at the point in my life where I just really, really wanted to examine what that meant specifically. And I'm still kind of searching for that answer, to be honest with you.
Okay. Yeah, I like that. I don't know. I mean, it just struck me. I mean, I know you've got a lot of the points of interest on the map are capitalized, but just reading home, and that is a tender place for me. Home, the home I mean, literally the home that I grew up in was a very, very special place. And then when that home was no longer our family home, I decided that home is where the mom is.
Right.
And yeah, Or, and now it's where home is where the people that you love are for me,
Mhm.
the coziness, the community, the feeling of a soft landing in a safe space. Just the capital H just did a lot for me. So thank you.
Well, also it's a sense of, you say you can't ever go home again, right? That's the
Yeah,
saying.
that's the same.
But what that means and how you carry that forward. Like my mom wanted to make Christmas cookies when she was becoming a mom for the first time. And she went to a magazine and she got cut out cookies, that you can make. And as I can't remember how old she was, like 23 or 24 when that's what she did. She makes, and so now my whole life she has made those cutout cookies. Those cutout cookies, we sit there and we ice those cookies every Christmas. It is very important to my sister that we do that every year, and that's the tradition that you're carrying on. So the same thing with what a sense of home is. You can't ever go home again. Your home is not, your childhood home is gone. But what that means to you, you can recreate that and you can make that for other people. And a sense of all of that is kind of what I wanted lying beneath all of my stories as well. How you choose, the world can keep doing things to you and beating you up, but how you choose to carry yourself and what you choose to carry forward and how you choose to address it, that's up to you.
Every story moves through stages, and Story Sessions is built to meet you at each one. Start with a focused discovery session to uncover your story's arc, and then move into a guided series that sharpens your voice, your positioning, and your path forward. And when you're ready, step into launch with expert coaching to help your story land with clarity and impact. And sometimes, when a story truly stands out, we don't just help guide it, we publish it. Find out where your story starts at storysessions.live.
And it's important what you choose, how you choose. So, speaking of community and how we interact with others, you have the big woods on the map. What type of community does the big woods represent?
The big woods for me is there's, and we all have our family stories, right? The legends of this and that, how your grandparents met or all that. My grandmother on my father's side, I didn't know her very much. I really only met her like once, I think, when I was little, but she was a Cherokee woman and she had had some troubles in her life and she did not trust white men. And she had a piece of property, and into her 80s, she would still walk her property. And there was just something about that. I heard that story from when I was tiny. An old woman walking in the woods. It just got me, just walking along and whistling and singing to herself. And I wanted to wrap the whole story around that, around this sense of place where the bears lived. But I kind of wanted this little bit of a mystery based on something from my own childhood, just what that looked like. Now, I've done research on my grandmother and her family, and it's way different than why I imagined it when I was a kid, but that memory is still in there. And it's just a wonderful image, a place to jump off from to give a sense of somewhere.
So she's represented in your stories.
She is, yeah.
Yeah. Prudence?
Prudence.
Yeah. That's I was interested to know how that character came about and the origin story. And now just the imagery of seeing her, your grandmother, walking and owning her property and her land and staking her claim and claiming her home.
And how important being out in nature was, that's for me when I was a kid, that was the refuge, that was the place to go. And it's just funny, generationally, it was just kind of the same place for her. And it's just a great place to tell a story too, because it's not, in the story, it's not just a perfect piece of woods. It's man has touched it and the woods has come back to reclaim itself. And one of the images in the story was something from the woods by my house. There was a car with a tree growing out of the hood. And I just
Oh,
always
wow.
wanted to use that in something like we come here and we put our hand on something, but nature is just going to keep on coming, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. It, just right when you said that, it reminded me of Joni Mitchell's song, they pay paradise and put up a parking lot.
Right.
And I'm just thinking about how that nature can reclaim itself. It's hard. It can be hard when there's
Yeah.
cars and pavement in the way, but the natural order of things is what should exist in the end.
Yeah. Well, if given a chance, that's what it'll do, you know? So
Yes. Yes. There was a character, another one that I was interested in, and I don't know, is it Shmoo?
the Shmoo.
The Shmoo. Yeah.
So the Shmoo, I needed someone from town. I needed someone that represented civilization and society and pop culture to come and meet my bears, and of course, it ends with them, butting heads with them. And Loretta and I had fun when we actually made the first Shmoo. I needed to make the bear so we could give that picture to the illustrator so he could make it for the book. So she and I decided to have fun with it, and we pulled out a bunch of old vintage ties and chopped them all up. And so the Shmoo, the original one, is made out of old vintage silk ties. And that just seemed to be perfect. He's a tie through and through, the Shmoo is, you know. He's the person that's going to say the wrong thing. He thinks too much of himself. He claims too much of the credit. And he's accidentally right, which makes things even worse going forward. So I needed a foil for Curtis, and he was perfect. And that's the kind of writing the Shmoo, it just goes. I like writing in rhymes, and it just lends itself to a lot of opportunities. I just get to make fun of, he gets to make fun of himself over and over, but he takes himself so seriously. And it's just a fun character to write for sure.
Yeah. Good representation too.
Yes. And he has followers. The new are the followers of the Shmoo. So bouncing those two rhymes off each other is lots of, and so the phrase you were thinking of, and on they went, buzzing and busy like bees, but making no honey. That's what it was.
Yes. Yes. Just spinning their wheels.
That was
So
one I thought it up in the car and had to run into the house. Don't talk to me, dog. I got to write something down. Hang on. Okay, I got it.
It's a good one. It's a good one, and the visual is good. All your visuals are good, and I especially enjoyed getting to hear some of your reading. And I know that, or you have a YouTube released for the audio, is that right?
I have an Audible for the Scaredy, the first one, the Sleuth of the New, and then this next little short that you read, I'm going to be posting that this week. Actually,
You're going to post that, okay?
Tuesday, so I'm going to post it today. It's Fergus worrying about Tuesdays, and today is Tuesday.
Perfect. Well, yes, and we'll definitely include a snippet from your reading, if that's okay.
Fantastic.
Because it really brought me even more into the characters to hear you read it, because I think it's important for readers to have their own cadence and their own visuals, but also to have a perspective from the author is also really interesting. And I think it took me just maybe one level deeper or two to hear you read it, and the rhyme scheme is really fun.
That's seems to be the case. I've been told that people enjoy hearing me read it in my own voice and with what inflections. I find that sometimes, like my original idea of consolidation of terms, like trying to say it the least, when I'm reading it out loud to myself, that's when I find other rhymes, and I find it expanding a bit in that way. But it does so organically, and I always give myself the opportunity to go along with stuff and just like see how big it can be, and then filter it back and refining it to where, again, to where it reads right and to where it feels right. And I put the inflections on the right parts and stuff like that.
So how does it feel to have the author side of you running alongside of the other facets of your life?
I love being camera operator, Laura Lynn.
Yeah.
Like it's one of those round peg kind of things. Like when I found that job, I'm good at my job and I love doing it.
Ah, I love that.
But the only other thing I want to do is write at this point. To me, when you're in the zone with writing, when it's showing up, you're chasing. I'm not fighting it. I'm not. It's just showing up, and I'm hanging on, trying to find out what's happened next. And that's my favorite stuff. And it doesn't happen that way all the time, unfortunately. But when it does, it's really, really good, and it scratches that creative itch that we all have. And and I have something at the end that I can hold. I can see what the result of my efforts are. And it's, I've dunked a basketball. I've sank an 8-ball on the break. I've made a strike. Writing a good story is right up there with all those others.
Mm. And has writing a story in any way affected how you see through the lens of your camera?
You can tell a story with a picture, you know what I mean? If you do it right.
Yeah.
And the same thing with a story. It's about stripping what is not important away and what is still there. So yeah, I can see where it's maybe shaped it in that way for sure.
Yeah. And then also, I really wanted to get one of these before I left the book festival where we were last in March in Tucson. But the coloring book, you have the coloring book.
Yes.
And it's fantastic.
Thank you.
Yeah. It reminds me of the adult coloring books, but they're also, it's also for children, but all the small spaces, that you can color in.
Yes.
And do you have it?
I have it right here if you want to see it.
Let's see it. Yeah.
There it is right there.
Oh, yeah. It immediately says, yes, color me now.
Just like in the book, it was important that I have one page that was, because we lived out in the country when I was a kid, like I said, and we only went to the library maybe once every couple of weeks. Mm-hmm. So you got like 3 books.
Yeah.
You better not pick a dud, And if you were lucky, there was a map at the front, like I said. Mm-hmm. And then if there was a 2-page illustration in there, that felt like there was something extra. When we did the coloring book, I wanted to make sure that there was a 2-page to color. So you got your money's worth out of that one too. So.
Well done. Well done. Now, are there...
There's no, none of that.
Okay.
But it was important to me too, to where so there's illustrations in the book and then there's illustrations in the coloring book, but I wanted to tell different parts of the story. So we used the coloring book as a way to fill in some of those gaps that aren't illustrated in the actual book itself.
Yeah. Yeah. It's great. You're so creative in so many aspects. I love it. I've really enjoyed our time together. And I wanted to know, is there something that you would want a child or an adult or both to walk away with when they've experienced Curtis and Fergus and all of your characters?
I definitely have. There's the idea is that my characters all kind of come from a place where everyone is wounded a little bit in some sort of a way. Mm-hmm. But it's not the final statement on who they are. Yeah. And that's how I feel about myself. And that's the point of view where I tend to write from.
So at the end of the short here, I read this: Curtis was always going to be the most Curtis, and Fergus was always going to be the most Fergus. And neither wanted the either to ever be anything other.
I say neither wanted the either to ever be anything other, but I didn't know how to write that way. So.
Oh, okay. Because I thought maybe I read it right. Neither wanted the either. I like that. Yes, it works. I don't know how you spell it though.
I don't know how you spell it either, so I wrote it that way. But isn't that, we just all want to be accepted for who we are and where we're coming from. And a lot of those Curtis and Fergus stories, I'm a big fan of the Andy Griffith Show. And there's scenes with Andy and Barney, just 2 guys hanging out. Nobody's trying to impress the other one. They're just 2 guys talking and maybe driving each other a little crazy. And they're just hanging out because they like the other guy. That's what Curtis and Fergus is all about.
I love it. I love it. You've been delightful to have, Dee. So delightful.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Really hope to get to spend some more time with you in person in the future. And I'm looking forward to seeing more of what you're doing and the short coming out. And there's so many wonderful things on the horizon. I'll make sure to put notes of links of where to find you. You're welcome. Why don't you give us your any handles, socials, or websites that you would like to throw out there for our
We're
listeners?
on Instagram at Curtis and Fergus, the Scaredy Bears, and we're
Okay.
on the internet. That's scaredybears.com.
Awesome. That's great. All right. Well, thank you so much. And I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you having me.
Eeny, miny, oni. See, it began, as things tend to, with something that seemed like nothing to start, something passing for nothing, while really being quite something instead. Something crazy amazing. I'll bet you want to make a note about it even, or write it down on the calendar to look back on later. Look back on later just so you can say, wow. And when you do, you'll remember where it started too. Way, way out in the big woods, there along the main trail, with Curtis and Fergus being as Curtis and as Fergus as Curtis and Fergus might ever be.
For more information on Dee Nichols, Curtis and Fergus, and the whole Scaredy Bears series, visit www.scaredybears.com. Thanks so much for listening to Story Sessions, where your story matters. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a 5-star review, subscribe to our channel, and share it with someone you know. To learn more about the Story Sessions family, visit storysessions.live. That's storysessions.live. Thanks so much and see you next week.